that leads us nicely into the second of the questions, doesn't it? Because we're talking about, well, we know there's a really serious problem with the supply of secondary maths teachers at the moment, and has been actually for a number of years, but it seems to be as bad now as it's ever been. So I wonder, Kathryn, if you might want to talk about that a little bit in the context of your work.
Yeah, I would straight away say that it is much more difficult to recruit in specific regions than it is in others. I think regions and types of schools, people are attracted to a school that's got the words good or outstanding in front of it. Yeah. And also people who have attended a big university in a big city are more likely to look for, a big thriving city, are more likely to look for work around that area. So therefore, we have less problems recruiting, say, in the Sheffield area or the Wakefield area, where, Wakefield's very close to Leeds and it's a very vibrant, young city and very professional, and same with Sheffield. So much more straightforward than when we go into areas where the main city nearby is less vibrant, or there's not a main city nearby. Also, I think that because of the additional challenges in these schools that have, very sort of complex needs from their students, that they're more difficult to work in, it's a lot more energy consuming. People aren't attracted to that on the whole.
Yeah, so I think what you're saying is that as a result of that means that the kind of disadvantage gap is widened by the difficulty in recruiting teachers to areas that are in disadvantage.
Yes, it could be the case that might happen, because although there is some funding attached to encourage people to work in schools of high deprivation, there's some DFE funding attached to that. But actually, that funding is for people in their first 5 years of teaching. And really what those students need are people who are quite experienced in the craft of, designing really engaging lessons without that becoming a huge workload for them, because they've already got that experience and confidence in their craft. And I think that, those students would benefit from teachers who are perhaps a little bit more experienced and actually demonstrably excellent teachers.
Yeah.
I mean, my dream would be that, if in our trust I could have a subject specialist in every, I have a full team of subject specialists in every department, that would be absolutely wonderful, but it's not the case. So then you have to look at more sort of creative ways of getting that, but not only a subject specialist who is really quite experienced. I mean, our ECTs are phenomenal, I have to say. So we're really lucky, and we have often worked with them through their ITE time as well. And so we are really lucky. I think we get some absolutely great ECTs, but it's a big workload for them.
Yeah. So you're talking about working with people. So you have people who come into your schools when they're doing initial teacher training, and then when they're early career teachers, you're continuing to work with them and develop them. They stay.
Yeah, they stay, which is fantastic. And I think that's because they get I do genuinely believe that they get a really wonderful and supportive experience in our schools, whichever school it is, actually, because our teachers are really, really committed to getting the best for the children, so they want to work with those ECTs in a really similar way, and the ITs in a really similar way.
Yeah. So you think that because the way the trust works, you're able to develop teachers, and one of the issues is not just recruitment, it's retention as well, isn't it, of teachers? I mean, are there things that you've discovered from your experience in Outwood Grange that help with retention and
Yes, loads. So I do think I can't just pluck the figure off the top of my head, but I do know, because it was mentioned at a recent conference, that we actually have, in comparison with the national picture, quite a low attrition rate in comparison with the national picture for all our staff, including our maths teachers.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other contributing factors, such as feeling part of a community, etc. But I do think that one of our strong areas of focus is professional development, actually.
Yeah.
And we really value that as a trust, and we try to make sure that, you know, that there's equity in getting really good professional development. So we're really behind the MPQs. We really encourage people, if they're in a leadership position, to get involved with those. We work obviously with the Maths Hub. I mean, you know, the lead schools in the trust, and we have secondary mastery specialists and we have primary mastery specialists within the trust, and work group leads, and a couple of people who work on the Maths Hub leadership and management team. All of those opportunities, I think, because the trust is so behind the idea of professional development and system leadership, I do think that we support that incredibly strongly. And I know that that keeps some people in our trust. They tell me, you know, and those who, I mean, literally on Monday, we also were told that, and it was following a Heads of Maths conference, which again, it's a professional development opportunity. You know, it's where we've got that opportunity to get all of the heads of department together in one room with professional development focus, and then they all agree to go and work with their teams with that same professional development focus. So literally they experienced something on Monday, they went and delivered it in their own departments on Tuesday, you know, and they will continue to look at that. And that is, it's a massive thing, because it's about supporting your staff to be the best teachers that they can be. Because ultimately they then will give the children the best deal that they can possibly get. And we talked about the departments and the makeup of the departments, and we talked about which members of staff needed different pathways for their professional development. So in the schools where we have a high number of non-specialists, then actually it would be good if they got engaged with, obviously, subject knowledge programs at this stage, rather than perhaps mathematical thinking. Or do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
The kind of, we really think carefully about the, like, sort of curating a professional development pathway. I do think that the staff really, really value that. And
so what you're able to do is you're looking at the staff that are teaching maths across the trust and thinking about them as individuals and what professional development they need to meet their needs, so they can become more effective maths teachers.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, I do think I'm in a really fortuitous position to be able to have the knowledge of everything that, for example, the Maths Hub provides, and also have quite a good knowledge around the MPQs in leading teacher development, leading teaching, primary leading mathematics as well. I think that, as well, with my other colleagues who also have this kind of really good knowledge, we sit down and we think really carefully about what different people should go on. And also the fact that we've got people within the trust who want to become, say, secondary mastery specialists.
Yeah.
Then what we do is, I mean, we welcome that with open arms, but in the secondary sector, that's really difficult to manage, because it's very difficult to get them out of school.
Yeah.
So what we do is we look at, is there an opportunity for this member of staff to actually either have a trust role for one day a week, or a secondment for one day a week, or actually, in the case of one person, work across 2 Maths Hubs, because actually, although they belong to our trust, their hosts, their school, their hub school, is actually in a different Maths Hub, so that's to make up a whole day. because then what a secondary school can do is they can timetable that teacher, so actually you're not pulling them out of the classroom.
So I think what you're saying is that the kind of the scale of the trust makes it possible for you to be able to enable teachers to access professional development more easily and plan their professional development. And I mean, one of the things that I know is a barrier to many teachers accessing professional development in maths is that they're so important in their school, that their school is so short capacity that they're just not able to access it. But you think that the trust structure and the working with the way the Maths Hub works as well enables you to get over that to some extent.
Well, yeah, to some extent. I'm not going to say it eradicates all issues, but you know, to some extent we can create situations that will work better for people. But if I had a magic wand, what I'd really like is I'd like every single because we have what's something called learning performance time on a Tuesday after school. And of those we have 3 of them over the academic year, 1 per term, designated to the subject development as well. So this is nice, but obviously I'd love more. So the dream would be if we could have them always subject specific, you know, for those 2 hours on a Tuesday, and what phenomenal work you could do there. And I was thinking about this, I was actually thinking about this today with my colleague, because we were talking about our ECTs, and the dream would be to get all of our ECTs not teaching, say period 4 and 5 on a Tuesday, right across the trust, and then we could get them all together for the Maths Hub ECT program community, or for some really specific pedagogical elements, or to look at just the representations and structures that we use in the trust consistently. Because what we find we have to do is find this time in twilights a lot in secondary, and then you don't get everybody who you need. And I think all the feedback we get from the people who do the different things that we put on is that, it's super helpful, it's made their planning actually reduce, but you can't convince somebody that until they start coming. And I think that time should be protected, especially for ECTs. I think realistically, I know that they have 20% PPA, and actually when they go into the second year, they still get that slight little bit more than they did previously. But I do think that if you want to retain your ECTs, you really need to invest in their start in that. And it links to what I was saying to you about our when we have ITEs in the school, they see how we work with the other teachers, and that looks attractive to them, because they see the support that they get through that, both through professional development and through actually things like coaching and much more closer work. So I do think being looked after and having your professional development looked after is really key thing.
Being looked after with professional development in a subject-specific way that's going to help you to teach your maths better. That seems to be what you're saying, and what you're hoping to do more of.
They get through their ECT programs, they get the other elements of that. So they get all the other whole school things, but they don't get a great deal of subject-specific in that first year. I think they do they get 2 subject-specific days, or is that the ITEs? I'm now getting myself confused. But it's not a part of that ECT framework in the first year. That's all about it's fabulous, don't get me wrong, it's brilliant, but it could do with also some subject-specific in there.
What it sounds, what you're doing in Outwood Grange is you're providing subject-specific support from subject specialists. You haven't got generalists doing this. You've got people who are proven maths teachers working with early career teachers or ITs on teaching practice.
So within the department, there might be a couple of really great teachers. They might work and more of a mentorship or a coaching model, or we have subject directors who are outstanding maths teachers and outstanding maths leaders who have then gone to work more across more schools than one. So they might work across, say, 3 or 4 schools, and they'll have a real focus on their different needs in different departments. So they might be working in a department that actually, it's quite well, do you know what, everybody bar one's a subject specialist, so we'll set up a coaching model here, and we'll do some work around something that has been observed on learning walks that is in need of improvement. Or you might be in a department where it's really young. I say young, I don't mean they're all really young, I mean it's a young department, as in green, new.
New.
I can't think of the word, but because you do still get quite a bit of transition. People do move on, and we do have attrition. But you might have quite a few non-specialists, so that departmental work might be actually a whole department working on something together on their subject knowledge. But I think you're right. I do think that if you haven't really got that subject knowledge part of your development in those first few years, you're going to really struggle, because a massive part of it is understanding why that student's got it wrong. And no matter what resources you've got in front of you, we talk about this quite a lot, the resource isn't the silver bullet. The teacher is the
teacher is the key thing.
And they need to understand all the nuances of actually just being a classroom teacher, that person in front of the students, and getting them engaged, motivated and inspired. But also they've got to have enough subject knowledge to see when it's a misconception, where that misconception came from. And over time, experience gives you that. So you already don't you? They've got that wrong because actually they've seen that. They've seen this and they've made that misconception.
What you're talking about, Kathryn, is the specialist knowledge for teaching mathematics. That's the term the NCTM uses, isn't it? Where it's both knowledge of maths as a subject, but also knowledge of pedagogy in mathematics, and the kind of things that students do wrong and why they do it, and how to address those misconceptions. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so Kathryn, if you could, if you were in charge of education, and you had the opportunity to think about how you might address the problem of maths teacher supply, what might be the first? What might be a thing that you would do?
Right, I wouldn't keep throwing monetary incentives at people necessarily. I would still require that funding to create greater opportunities for those teachers to get professional development. So I think, the cost of not having a teacher teach one period is over a year. It's about £2,500. So I would be looking at ways of using that, putting that funding into schools to enable those teachers to have, and I know they've got quite a bit of time, but even more time and protected time, so I could align it and get really strong PD in, even if it was aligning it with national programs or the Maths Hub, so they could bring together. So that's one thing. If you're going to incentivize financially, then it's a golden handcuff in a way. So perhaps you get it when you've done your first 5 years, or you get a bit each year for your first 5 years. I do think that if you're going to go, you'll probably have gone after 2 years, I think. But I don't know that data, so you never know. You never know. People might stay for 4 years and then leave. But I'd be more surprised at that. I think if you've got to sort of 4 or 5 years, you really get it, and you really want to be a teacher for the right reasons.
And if you've had a good supportive experience as well, then you're kind of wedded to the idea of being a professional mathematics teacher, and that's a great thing to be.
I'd certainly look at the media and social media, because what tends to happen is there's an imbalance in what is out there for people to read, because people don't tend to go on there to just wax lyrical about what a gorgeous day they've had in the classroom.
Yeah.
I would imagine the 20%, 80% rule falls into play here.
Yeah.
And the moaners are more likely to go on than the woo. And it's an amazing job, Charlie. It's an amazing job. It's the most fulfilling job I can imagine anybody could have. And it's good if you can manage the workload and manage the stress levels and feel super supported through whatever support needs that is. So I think if I were, I'd be thinking really hard about support through time, some support through financial help, but I'd maybe looking at collaborative development with peers, so that they are because bringing together ECTs across a town or a small region, if you could look at that, I think that would be really, really helpful, because they've got to do the ECF. They have to do that. So to expect them to do subject specific on top of that in their own time is shocking. But if they had designated time for that maths PD, I think that would be really, really super helpful.
Yeah, so look after people with time. What about we talk about retention as well. I mean, people leave teaching sometimes after a lot more than 5 years. Are there are things that could, I mean, is it time again? Is it just being able to continually sort of work with your colleagues, collaborate, aim to do what you do better all the time? Is that something that would?
I do think time comes up an awful lot. We did a bit of a staff voice with our heads of departments one year about if we were to incentivize you to keep you running that department brilliantly, what would you prefer? Would you prefer a recruitment and retention allowance or would you like 4 free periods?
Yeah.
And they all said they would want the 4 free periods, because they're good people and they wanted to get into their other their teachers' classrooms and support their department.
Yeah.
And they knew that to do that job well, they needed more time to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And actually, when you look on the TES now, some people are putting on their adverts. Well, I've read it today and I wrote it down. Thought, oh, it said something like, competitive salary plus, plus a generous PPA allowance.
Yeah.
And what they're saying is to do your job well.
Yeah.
Because to do it really well and support your staff really well, you need that time. So I would agree.
Yeah, I think that's a interesting point to finish on. I think the idea that it isn't necessarily money, because money doesn't. If you're a committed teacher, committed maths teacher, what you really want is to be able to do your job better. You're very committed to that job, and having more money isn't going to help you do your job better, but having more time certainly can. And so that's a key factor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but thanks so much for talking to me, Kathryn. It's hard to be put on the spot, isn't it, to have a conversation like this? But
really hard.
Just thank you so much.